I remember at some point someone told me, oh, you've been on the dark side of the force. And I was like, how come is it? It's not the dark side, it's just a different way. You know, it's all about telling stories, to be able to actually create a distance and be able to lead people despite everything that is going on and what you are going through. I think the best advice that someone tell me is, Émilie, chill. To become a positive leader, I think people need to feel safe. They need to feel that they are trusted and that they have room for mistakes. In my team that I have a lot of leaders, and this is what I like, and some of them don't even know that they are leaders.
Welcome to Business Minds. Today we're hosting Émilie Laguerre, Director, Business to Business Marketing and Communication at CBC Radio Canada. Émilie, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure.
So this interview will be focusing on the theme of leadership. So we'll go through your personal path and professional journey together. So I would like to ask, the first question is, what is your role? Could you describe your role in just a few words? And what does it consist in?
Yeah, so basically I think just the title in itself is pretty clear. So business to business marketing and communication. Basically, I'm handling the marketing and communication strategy for the Media Solution Revenue Group. So it's the department that will generate revenues for CBC Radio Canada through advertisement or distribution of content. So basically, my team and I were handling like the strategy around making sure that advertising agencies are aware of the commercial solutions that CBC and Radio Canada is offering throughout the country. So we are, coast to coast to coast, from Newfoundland until like Vancouver. So we're covering the whole country.
Perfect, very clear and complete. So to go throughout your journey, we would like to understand where it started. So my first question is pretty simple. Where did you grow up? And what kind of job were you dreaming to get when you were a kid?
That's a good question, like the job, because I think I had several, but since starting from the start, I was born in Montreal in the Rosemont neighborhood, not very far from here, but I grew up in Laval. I think I was, at that time, I remember like when you're in school, they ask you what you want to be and you have to, answer it. And I think I had several choices. I wanted to be an astronaut, a scientist, an archaeologist, and a teacher, and I'm none of them. But still, I studied science and archology, so almost got it.
Wow. Okay, we'll get to how you went from that to coming here.
Yes.
Before that, what kind of character were you as a kid? Like, in a setting, we have a few examples. I don't know if you need any. Yeah.
So I was very shy.
Okay.
And people are always surprised when I say this. So I was,
we are.
I was really shy. I still had a good strength of character, but I was very timid. So I was afraid of strangers, people talking to people that I didn't know anything about. I think this all changed when I grew up and I had my first job, where I had to sell clothes to people. So I had to, say hi to strangers. So I think there was like a shift there. I think I was really shy, and then at some point starting working with customers helped me like kind of grew out of my shell. So, I feel like it's like my mom used to say that at home I was like this kid with a lot of strength and a lot of willness, and I knew what I wanted, but at school I was so shy, one of the quiet kids. I had my group of friends, but I was happy with just the way it was, and I was not bipolar, but it's just I think this is the way it was when I was young.
Okay, it makes sense. We're not always the same person at home or in a public setting.
Yes.
But despite this shyness, did you ever have this leadership fiber within you? And how did it manifest when you were younger? Did you envision becoming more of a leader later on when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think, like I just mentioned, I think it started when I had my first job, when I had to talk to a stranger. And I think at the last year of my high school, I was maybe 15, and then there was a leadership option. Like some people take the computer at the time. You had computer programs in high school. But I chose leadership. And then I think this also helped me out, like grew out of my shell once again, because the type of activities we had was like to organize an activity, organize a party. So I think this is where I realized that I had something in me that could actually, I could be able to gather a team and say, okay, let's go in that direction. So I was still pretty young, but I feel like this is where I had my first, encounter with what leadership was.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 15.
Okay. Makes sense. Perfect. And then after that, what studies did you pursue? And did you have a clear goal of career in mind in the studies area of your life?
Yeah. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So, a lot of ideas or no ideas at all. So being an astronaut was like really nice, but, in reality, it's other stuff. So I was really not good in maths. So, science in itself was not my final choice. After high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I wanted to be an artist. I was really good at drawing, but having an Asian dad, it's not like, art is a hobby. It's not a job. So I had to kind of, for him, I think he evolved since that time. But at that time, I had to choose, and I finally picked the Histoire et Civilisation, so History and Civilization program. It was a new program available at the Cégep, and it was like every discipline, but with a history orientation. So history of maths, history of French, history of geography. So it was amazing for me. I was so eager to learn stuff. So I decided to pursue in archaeology. But the program in Montreal was more related to North America, and I was more interested in Rome and, Greece history, that classic stuff. So I decided to go in ethnology instead, so study of culture. And this is what brought me to communication, to marketing, because everything relates to human, how we think, what, our culture, our values. So anthropology and ethnology are really key in communication, marketing, and even advertising. So it was really key to my success and development in the years right after.
Okay, wow. My next question feels a bit off since everything you just said, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So throughout this journey, from wanting to be an astronaut to history and anthropology, did you ever envision yourself when you were younger to become director in B2B communication and marketing role?
Certainly not, but I was envisioning myself working at Radio-Canada, though, because it was on my short list, I say, because I grew up with Radio-Canada, watching Radio-Canada TV. So for me, it was an organization that I was really attached to. So working there was really a goal, if I may say. So maybe not in that role, but working for the organization for sure. This is something that was kind of a dream, like when I was young, for sure.
Okay, pretty amazing. So the organization was a dream. Did you have any inspiration figures, any role models when you were, again, still focusing on your younger years?
Yeah. I'm mixed race. This is something very important in my identity. My mom is French Canadian. My dad is from Haiti. So when you are young, it's really hard to have role models that looks like you. So and I thought about your question a lot, and it was hard for me to answer because there was kind of a lack of representativity when I was young. So it was hard for me to see other people that looked like me and that I could identify to. So, but still, when I think about when I was young, it was Martin Luther King that played a huge role for sure, because he was able to change the world based on, dream, empathy, and nonviolence, and this is pretty rare, if I may say. So him and my father, for sure, was a role model because he immigrated from Haiti in the early 70s. It was really hard for him to, leave his country and start anew here. He was, educated, intellectual. He was loyal. He was disciplined. He had all the great qualities I think you can find in humankind. So every time I struggle with something, I think about him. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he stays, has a figure, if I may say, that I look for when there's something coming up.
So how did your career start? We would say your proper career
Yep.
in this industry.
In this, so it started when I worked 13 years in the book industry. So, and this is where my career started. I was a bookstore clerk part-time. It is kind of strange to say. I was working while I studied anthropology, and after a year or two, someone, my boss said, "Okay, Milie, I think you're pretty good. You've been there for some time. Do you want new responsibilities? Because you could become assistant manager." And I was like, "Okay, this is kind of a leadership role." And I was still studying, so I hesitated, but I finally said, "This is an opportunity. I cannot say no." So I started, I was 21, so I was pretty young, and we had, that bookstore had 50 employees and 80 during Christmas and the holidays.
Wow.
So it was a lot.
While studying at the same time?
Sorry?
Were you still studying at the same time?
I was studying at the same time.
Wow.
So I was studying part-time, working full-time.
Okay.
And I was studying communication. I finished anthropology and decided to switch to a communication degree. And this is really where my career as a manager started. It was awful. It was really hard because I was not experienced. Uh-huh. I never had any leadership training. So I was really just trying to learn on the field, and my conception of what leadership was, I think, biased at the time. It was based on authority, following rules, and not, what I know what leadership is. So I think this is where it really started. I stayed in this organization for a while. Like I mentioned, I stayed there 13 years. Yeah. I'm going to call Drake. This is weird, but I started from the bottom and then I got there in 10 years. I went from a bookstore clerk part-time to marketing and communication director. Uh-huh. So I had a lot of, I went from, like I mentioned, assistant manager, and then I went to the head office as just a marketing, officer, like agent, I may say, and then I became consultant, and then first consultant, and then I became director after a couple of years. So this is, I think, where I, really embraced that managing and leadership role a bit more, and then came in Radio-Canada a couple of years after.
Okay, excellent. And a few questions about these steps, just rolling a little bit back. You said you had to learn everything on the field directly. What key skills did you learn there to start with?
Empathy.
Okay.
This is and you will hear me a lot about empathy because I really think it's key. At that time, like I mentioned, I thought that being a manager was really, following rules and making sure everything was good on the floor and stuff like that. And with the employees that were very different from one another and had different needs, I had to adapt and understand what they needed to be able to perform and do their job. I mean, they were not surgeons or, policemen. They were selling books. But still, they had specific needs, specific, different realities, and I had to be very empathic to their, needs for them to feel safe and comfortable. But this took me a while to figure this out. And I think, and I just, I'm so grateful for that experience. I remember at some point, someone was, had a bad experience. Someone was crying on the floor. And I said, okay, an employee, I have to be too precise. And I took him in my office just for 30 minutes and I just listened to that person. And at the end, that person was smiling and he was feeling so much better. And I kind of realized how my role was also, to not to give them advice or stuff, just to be there, to understand what they were going through, making them feel safe so they can be happy then. So, and to perform. So that was a life-changing experience that made me understand a bit more about my role as a leader or as a manager.
Okay, beautiful. And I have a side question regarding the same kind of area of your career. Each time you reached to a new leadership role, did you feel you were considered differently?
For sure, yeah. I think the transition, when you are an employee and you transition to a manager role, it is really hard because you had your colleagues that you were equal with, and then you become their boss. And this is a pretty hard transition. I remember at some point someone told me, "Oh, you've been on the dark side of the force." And I was like, "How come is it? It's not the dark side. It's just a different way of doing things, and I'm there to support you. I'm not there to give you orders or stuff like that." So I think that type of transition is what I think is the most difficult. It happened twice in my career so far, and both times it was difficult. But then I learned through that, and I think it went well right after.
Okay. Are you saying that it might create some envy within your colleagues or something?
I don't think it's about envy. I think it's just about
the relationship you have.
Yeah, the relationship kind of switch. Yeah. So you can be friend with someone, and then you become their boss. So they could be there's a distance that kind of grows between the two of them, and you have to kind of find a way of keeping that relationship, but with a shift, if I may say. So this is strange, and I still have a hard time explaining it. I think people that are going through that type of transition needs a lot of support from their own management or HR, because it could be problematic at some point.
Okay, wow. And so you said it happened twice?
Yeah.
Without asking you exactly which times it were there different levels to it as you were progressing to higher level of management?
Yeah, for sure. So when you are, a bookstore clerk, that's the first step. But when you're coming from, I don't know, a consultant, and you come from, and you become a director, that involves a lot more responsibilities. And sometimes you could have other departments or the other employees from other departments that go under your leadership. So this is different again, because it's all about the perception sometimes. So when you are, it's just, I think, the transition between colleagues and boss that is just hard to tackle. So you need to build trust. You need to build, confidence, trust, and so people feel that they are supported in a safe environment with you. So this is, it just needs time sometime, and then it goes well after.
Okay, makes sense. I want to keep going with asking, what were the biggest turning points of your career? Not necessarily with the perspective of leadership, but just in general.
That's a good question. I think the pandemic was one.
Right.
Yes, turning points, because I think it was a very rough time for a lot of people. When you were, in the retail industry, it was pretty hard.
For sure.
So for sure, we had to figure what was going on, how long it would last. A lot of people lost their jobs, and we didn't know what was going on. And I think we also had a lot of time to reflect on what, I had time to reflect on what I wanted to do in life, where was I going. After working 13 years at the same place, you kind of wonder if you're going to stay there your whole life. So I think that was a big turning point for me, just to think about what I wanted to do, if I wanted new challenges or not. So I think this was pretty life-changing as well.
Okay, well, this is a perfect transition to my next question. We were wondering, when you've been so long in the same company in a bookstore chain, how do you make the shift to, first of all, from the private to the public sector, and from a bookstore chain to a national-wide television?
Sometimes, it's just life happens. And I think this is the best answer. After 13 years at the same place, I was really an expert. I knew everything about the book industry. I knew everyone. I was really comfortable. And I think there was like no surprise, not no surprise, but I knew what I knew what I was doing. I really, I was really an expert. So I felt like I mentioned, like I needed new challenges, and despite, having that position and that job in that industry that I really loved, I felt like I was ready for something else. It's like, and I don't know, like sometimes when you are in a really long-term relationship, you're
You get too comfortable.
yes, you grow comfortable, and sometimes like, okay, is it like, how do you, I don't know, it's like you kind of look for that new spark or something. So maybe you really like that person or that job, but you feel like you are ready for something else. And this is what happened. I felt like I was heartbroken, to be honest, when I decided to do something else, because I really loved that job in that book industry. It is, in my heart for my whole life. But I was ready for something else. And the media sector and industry, it looks a lot like the book industry, because,
really?
It's all about telling stories. Stories to inform and to educate, or stories to entertain.
Okay.
And you do it like through television or through books. So at the end, it looks a lot like the industries are very alike. So it's still familiar.
Okay. Perfect, beautiful answer. Do you see any difference between the very private sector that it was and something more public with Radio-Canada?
Yeah, there's a world between the two, though. So private sector, you kind of, it's easier sometimes when you have huge projects. On the private sectors, it goes really fast because there's less maybe rules and regulations. So when you are in the public sector, for sure, the public money, there's a lot of things to think about. So processes are way longer, and it's okay the way it is, because it's all about you're in a public corporation, so you have to be careful. So this is very different. I think in the current organization that I'm working with, I think we are about like 10,000 employees. So things go a bit slower than in a smaller organization with, I don't know, 250 people or even 200 people. So it's very different. But for me, I think it was really interesting because I like adding new tools to my toolkits. So it's just different experiences, and I think you kind of understand the mindset of, it's different mindsets like private and public, and then understanding the two of them, I think, is key. And it's just how can I say, it's different tools that you are able, and it's amazing learning experience.
Okay. And would you say that difference, that shift, was also something you felt in the way you had to be a leader, managing teams and everything?
Oh yes, for sure. Because on the private sector, you can almost do like, oh, you have an idea, okay, let's go. In the public industry, you have to ask for a lot more opinions.
Okay.
So, and it is more inclusive, if I may say as well.
Okay.
So you cannot achieve anything by yourself. So it kind of forces the collaboration. So, and this is what I actually like about the public sector, is that there's a lot more team working, projects than I used to have in the private sector.
Okay.
So this is great.
Okay, that makes sense. We've been going through your LinkedIn profile, and we've noticed that you've been working on the coverage of the Olympic Games.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So my role with, a whole lot of people is really just to raise awareness about all the opportunities of brands featuring, themselves with the Olympics. So I think it has been, it is a nice project because it is worldwide. And it's all about the emotions. And this is what I liked about this, because when the Olympics, it's not only about winning, it's also about losing. And sometimes the storytelling behind this is really great. So when you think about, the athletes that will work like all, for maybe 4 or 5 years to being able to be, to participate to the Olympics, and then you are a brand and you are able to be with them in that moment when they either lose or win. But at the end, it's the emotion that is transmitted. And when you are looking at the Olympic, when you are watching the Olympics, you want to feel the emotion with the athletes. So I think it's a wonderful, competition. And I really like with my team to, promote the Olympics because it is all about the emotion and the storytelling at the end.
Okay, well, this is, again, very interesting. It brings me to another question, because you've talked to us about storytelling a lot,
Yeah.
even from the bookstore industry, but you're also in charge of revenues here. How do you manage to, gather the two and work the two together, because they could feel contradictory at some points?
It's all about the storytelling. It works for everything. Okay, so basically, since I'm in charge of communication and marketing for the revenue group, my job is to create good storytelling to convince advertisers to choose, CBC Radio-Canada as a partner to feature their brands. So just for example, we know that there's, Anglos and Francos in Canada, and they have different, not identities, but, sometimes it's a cultural differences. So I think my storytelling capacities and my background in anthropology help me understand what the Anglophones are looking for, who they are, what they expect, how they live, and what the Francophones in the country are doing as well. And it's to create kind of a bridge between the two, and being able to connect and to communicate with them in their own languages and their own, cultural realities and stuff. So this is where I think me and my team, we are doing, and we are, I think, being great at it. I hope so.
Okay, that's great. And it makes me want to ask something to go even further a little bit. You've told us a lot about your interest in culture and people, even from your younger years, about the question of diversity and inclusion. We noticed you were an ambassador in that regard, which is another kind of leadership role. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course. In the past year, I've launched with co-workers. It's the Collectif Afro. Collectif Afro, which Black Collective in English, is an employee group that, what we wanted is just to make sure that employee with African, Canadian, or Caribbean background could feel safe in a workspace, but also being able to regroup and to, create, relationships and have a sense of belonging in the workplace. So this is what we intended with that. The goal is really just because when we talk about EDI, we talk about hiring employees, back employees, but often the challenge is to keep them. It's retention that is really hard, because sometimes they leave the organization after a year or two. So what we wanted is to create a space for them to grow and feel comfortable and create that sense of engagement with the organization. So I truly think that every organization should have ERG group, like they call that, it is just LGBTQ plus groups, Black groups, or Asian, or even there are people that have a different, family reality. So it's just places for them to, since they have sometimes a different reality, that they feel like they create a connection between themselves so they can stay longer on the workplace.
Okay, that makes sense. What are you most proud of in your career?
I think it's not even an achievement that I've made, but I think it's when I see employees that I had, see them grow and achieving their own dreams. And if I had just that small role in their development, because, whatever thing I did, I think this is, for me, it's a big accomplishment. So I'm just going to give out an example.
Yeah.
At my last job, I trained a lot of people, and I knew at some point that, they were ready for new challenges. And this is also what motivated me to leave, because I knew people were ready to take on my role and to grow themselves. And I'm extremely touched to see, themselves being successful and being able to grow and to achieve their own dreams. So I think as a manager, this is something that I really enjoy, seeing all those employees being, successful and happy in their workplace.
Beautiful again. So far we've been focusing a lot about positive parts of the story. I'm going to try and play the devil's advocate for a second. What was the biggest crisis you ever had to face in your career, and how did you manage to go through it?
Yeah, COVID.
Again?
100%. Yeah,
Again?
COVID. Because in the retail industry, it was so hard.
Yeah.
Because we were closing stores, we were losing employees, we didn't know how long it would last. You kind of lose money, and you don't even know if the organization will still be, alive at the end of the year. So this generates a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. So I know a lot of people that, had to take sick leave, and it was hard for people. So in my role, it was hard because I lost everyone in my team. I was like the only one. I had the chance to keep my job that whole time, but I saw, how the impact was enormous on everyone around me. And in my role at that time, I had to take care of media relation, governmental relation.
Yeah.
So it was the biggest challenge ever. So I would never go through that again. So this was, I think, the hardest challenge I had.
Okay. And looking back, not just on this period, but throughout your entire career, is there anything you think you would have done differently when you think about it?
That's a good question, because, of course, if I go back, I could say, I would do this differently or stuff. But I don't think I would be where I am today if I had done anything else differently.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think even the mistakes that I made, younger in my first, leadership roles, or anything that was not perfect, still helped me get where I am today. So I would change nothing.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. So now we will be moving on to focusing a bit more on your vision and perspective of what leadership is. So my first question here is, for you, what makes a great manager first, and what makes a great leader?
Good question. For me, leader is definitely empathy. Okay. And manager, it's listening to people, being able to, that's a good question, because for sure, manager and leader, it's not the same thing. You could be a good manager and a bad leader, and you could be a good leader and a bad manager. Yeah. So I would say, being a manager, I think, being able to make decisions for sure, to take decision. I was saying listening to people, because you have to, listen to your team. Is it going well or not? What, do you have to interfere or stuff like that? But being a leader, I think I said empathy because you have to listen to, but understand and feel as well. Okay. I think a good leader is also someone that is able to have a good introspection. You have to learn, what triggers you, how you answer to those triggers, to be able to actually create a distance and be able to lead people despite everything that is going on and what you are going through. So I think that's a bit the difference between the two, I would say.
And do you think anyone could become a leader or a good leader? And if so, what does it take? So
my answer is yes, but on a different level.
Okay.
So I think someone can be a positive leader and some can be negative leaders, so
Okay.
we know. To become a positive leader, I think people need to feel safe. They need to feel that they are trusted and that they have room for mistakes so they can actually just be themselves and learn and stuff like that. In my team that I have a lot of leaders, and this is what I like, and some of them don't even know that they are leaders.
How so?
Because they feel like they are experts in their own field, and sometimes they feel like leadership comes with a position, and it's not the case. Leadership is sometimes being a really good expert. And I'm going to give an example. We have a project, and I have people that are here since 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and they know exactly what we need to do in all kind of situation because they've been through that already a ton of time. And sometimes despite me being the manager, I turn to them and what would you do in that situation? What do you think we should do? And then they go on, okay, we should do this, 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 and we have to be careful with that because this could, create that, or this or that. And I'm like, okay, just so lead the way. So you know how this is, you know what to do, so I'll follow you. And they're like, okay, let's go. And then at the end, I'm like, you lead this thing.
Okay.
So you were a leader in that specific project, and I think this is really what I like as a manager. Sometimes is to make people realize that they're leaders, even though they don't even know.
That's very nice. And maybe this next question may resound to it. Have you ever had a mentor, and what did they teach you?
I had a lot of mentors in the book industry.
Okay.
That was nice. I think this is how also I became an expert. I was really grateful of people just sitting down with me and say, okay, Émilie, this is, how things are rolling here and in the industry. This is what is happening and the history, the background. So I was pretty lucky, and I'm still friends with those mentors.
That's pretty cool.
In Radio-Canada, I was lucky enough to have I currently have a mentor, and this is part of a program of Radio-Canada.
Okay.
So I'm super grateful. But what I like the most is that sometimes mentors are not only senior management. It could be employees.
Okay.
Or people part of your team. I'm going to give out another example. I'm pretty lucky. People in my teams, I've been working here for like 20 years, 15 years. And when I started during the pandemic and I knew nothing about the organization, they said, we sat down and they explained everything to me. So I feel like they also were my mentors when I started until this day. I learned so much things through them. Then I feel sometimes like, even though I'm their manager, sometimes I feel like there's that mentorship relationship. It looks a lot like that. And I feel like this is where I learned. I mean, it's really recent that I kind of realized that mentors are not only people above you, it could be also people in your team. And it can come from, place that you don't expect.
Very nice. And what is your leadership style? I want to ask back to you a more personal question about yourself.
I think it's very open. I think it's connected to emotions. I want to make sure to understand how I feel, but how people feel as well. Let's say you have to go through a very difficult conversation, or there's a lot of stress because, there's a lot of projects and it's going everywhere. I'm the type of person that will like to sit down and how do you feel? And make sure that I can connect with employees. Sometimes it's hard because, life goes fast and you don't have time and there's a ton of things to do. But I think it is important, and this is why I was talking about empathy. And sometimes it's key. It makes a difference on a team that is connected and a team that goes everywhere in their own, ways, and it could lead to a complete failing. So my leadership style, I think, is really about connection and emotion.
Perfect. Could you tell us, how do you define success in the perspective of a leader I will complete my question. Do you think a great leader should be judged more in regards to the teams they manage, or more to the people they're accountable to, more above?
I think the people they lead. When you're going through, you have your end of year conversation with your boss and they say, okay, this went well or not. But we have a program here in Radio-Canada when it's the employees that are actually
Giving feedback?
giving feedback to you. And this is what I enjoy the most. Sometimes it can be hard, but it's a good reality check sometimes. But I think this is the feedback that I enjoy the most because it's real and it's, I don't know, more direct. I don't know how, it's just the way it is, I guess. It's just when people feel confident or safe enough to give you feedback while you are their leader or manager, I think this shows a lot of trust and confidence, and this is what I enjoy.
Okay, perfect. We're getting closer to the end of the interview. Last question about this section I would like to ask is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And would you give the same piece of advice to your 20-year-old young self?
I think the best advice that someone tell me is, Émilie, chill.
We're not expecting that.
And yes, and I think that it's the best advice because sometimes things are going so fast and you have to go through a lot of stress and I'm not saving lives. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a doctor. Even though sometimes you have to go fast, you have to decide and, create an action plan, and there's a lot of things going on. But you have to have fun as well. You have to enjoy the process as well. So when I look back at when I started and when I was, just younger and wanted to perform and be perfect, and I didn't, for sure, you seek perfection and you want to impress your colleagues and your boss. But to be honest, sometimes do the job, but have fun doing it. So chill. I think this is some things that I have to remind myself every now and then.
Excellent. Now we're getting to the opening, the ending of this interview. More personal questions on the side. If you could have a private meeting with someone, dead or alive, who would it be?
That it would be Martin Luther King, like I mentioned earlier.
That's a good one. I would like that too.
Yes. Alive, it would be Barack Obama, because I would like to know how he handled stress. I think he said 8 years in office, while you are president of the United States. I remember when he started, he had that dark hair, and when at the end he was all gray. So, but he never looked stressed. He was always had a lot of swag, and for sure he had to deal with a lot of things, but he never, let it show up. So I would like to, just have conversation eye to eye. Tell me the truth, Barack. How did you handle everything? I want to know.
That'd be pretty nice. Now I would like to ask you your 3 personal favorites. This is what we give for the ending of the interview. Number 1, what book inspired you, impacted you the most?
It's L'odeur du café by Danielle Laferrière, which
Perfume
is the
of the coffee in English.
the perfume of it's Danielle Laferrière is a member of the French Academy, but he was born in Haiti. So, and he was about the same age as my father. So it's just a story of it's a coming of age story. Young boy, 12 years old in Haiti. He's learning everything, about his environment. So, and what I really enjoyed about this book is that when he describes, someone eating a mango, you could actually taste it. Okay. So it's those really simple sentences, but you feel deep inside yourself. So he's very talented. So, and this book really changed my life when I was also 12 when I read it. And it's still the book that I'm giving as a gift to everyone I meet. So it's still my favorite book to this day.
Okay, can I ask, how did it change your life?
I think it was a connection with my Asian roots. My dad, as a Asian immigrant, didn't really talk about his life in Haiti. I know there's a lot of stuff that happened because at that time there was François Duvalier and his son. It was a dictatorship. So a lot of people flew Haiti at that time. It was really hard. So he never really talked about his days in Haiti, so his years in Haiti. So it was a way for me to connect with what could have been his story as a child.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. What movie inspired you the most?
The Fifth Element.
Okay. I was not expecting
Unexpected
that either.
I think it's about, it was a mix of history and future, if I may say, since it's, this is more the aspiring archaeologist in me. I think that really liked kind of the backstory about, ancient Egypt, but meeting like spaceships, which is maybe connecting with that astronaut that I wanted to be. So I think this is just a movie that made me dreamed and really like the aesthetic and the stories. So, and all the, the outfits by Jean-Paul Gaultier, just, this is something in itself.
Pretty cool. Excellent. Last question of these three. What's your favorite quote?
I'm staying in I have it on me right now. It's when they go low, we go high. It's by Michelle Obama. So I think I'm a bit a fan of Obama. So I think it's Michelle Obama that said that it's when everyone is going, being disturbing or, we know the political landscape in the past 10 years has been pretty rocky. So I think it's just when everything is going down, keep your head up. Reach for excellence, go ahead. And in French, there's this expression which is les chiens jappent, la caravane passe, which say when everyone is screaming, you still, you just go through it all and don't worry and do your thing. So I think this is my favorite quote and just idea, mindset of doing things.
Beautiful. Thank you. We're getting to the last question of the interview. What can we wish you for the future?
Pursue learning. I want to continue learning, and this is really important for me.
Excellent. Well, Émilie, thank you so much for being with us today. That was Émilie Laguerre on Business Minds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I feel very much privileged.
François Legault was probably in that chair, just so you know.
Wow.